Hi, you guys. Welcome to I Really Love Myself, the podcast with me, your host, Gianna Rackham, relationship mentor and coach. And I am here today to have a really good conversation with an online friend, Kevin. And we're gonna, I'm really excited today because we're gonna have a conversation with, I feel like, a masculine energy perspective of something that, like, we're both just gonna riff on that I feel like is gonna be really, really valuable for you guys. Because I just, okay, like I said in the last episode, like I'm bringing on specific guests for specific reasons, and that applies here as well. And so I just really wanted to bring him on today to share on something that I feel like can get a little lost in translation, in the relationship space. Like there's so much talk about, polarity and like union, and but then there's also talk about codependency, and I feel as though it can be confusing. Like these relationship waters can get a little confusing and murky. And something that I really, really see a lot is women swinging into hyper independency. And I've definitely been guilty of this myself. And so I want to have a conversation about this with a masculine energy on the call, on the podcast today. So I'm really, really excited to dive in. But before we do, I want to hear from Kevin and have him just introduce himself. So go
My
ahead.
name's Kevin.
Yeah.
Hi. Yeah, I'm the heart guy on Instagram. I have devoted my life to really studying human transformation and relationships because I feel like that is where the transformation and happens. Um,
Mhm.
it really is my belief that this is the dojo for spiritual development, whether it's a forever person or a forever relationship or not. Our intimate relationship in our life is the place to go, in my opinion, for growth spiritually. And if we approach it from that perspective, I think the game gets to be a lot easier and a lot more fun. But if we approach it from the perspective of, well, you need to make me happy and you need to meet my needs and this needs to happen and the list of things, other things that it could be, you're the source of my joy or my fun or my success or whatever, then you're in for a world of hurt. And that can also be part of your own ceremony, so to speak, and waking up and recognizing that the alchemy that love is. So um, I've had many near death experiences. I've had my heart broken a ton of times, and that led me to doing the work in this way and being trauma informed, and really understanding all the spiritual side of everything, because there's the mental side, and I think have, as a collective, understand that it's you're two in your masculine, you're two in your feminine. It's this attachment style, that attachment style, whatever polarity. And then there's the emotional side of it and the more somatic side of it, which is becoming more mainstream of trauma and understanding some of the deeper subconscious stuff. And then there's the spiritual side of it, which is where I really like to get into, because that is a whole other realm that's beyond those things. And when you play that game, it's kind of like the other stuff becomes a little less relevant, and the whole game of relationship becomes a lot more clear and way less confusing. So that's what I like to do for people, is like, because you're going to hear conflicting paradoxes all the time
Mhm.
in the space, and it can be really confusing. And that's why I don't talk about masculine feminine energy as much, or attachment styles as much, because if we view relationships through that lens all the time, I have noticed and I have observed from people that come to me as clients, or even just people online, it creates a lot of more confusion, almost more frustration, more confusion, because they're then trying to be in their feminine, which is different than just being in your feminine, right? So it's a whole other conversation. But anyway, that's a little overview of me and my work, and what I do and what I really love doing. I'm also a DJ, and I love to throw down. I also love Jesus, so there's that. So here we are.
Well, that's awesome. Super cool. I so admire just the versatility. Like, because DJing is kind of new for you, isn't it? Like relatively, or
Yes
no?
and no. I used to be a group fitness instructor before I
Okay.
did all the coaching stuff, like the relationship coaching stuff, and I would always curate my playlists for that. So I think that was my start. But yeah,
Mm,
the last year I've actually got a DJ board and I'm like throwing down, and that's been really fun.
that's awesome. Like that's so cool. I love that so much. Okay, so before, because I feel like you just cracked open a lot of things, which I am so here for, but like that is just something that is so important. I feel as though in the relationship, in any when you follow like relationship teachers or coaches or just enthrall yourself into certain kinds of bodies of work and just certain philosophies and theories, whether it's, polarity or like, codependency work or whatever it is, like just being able to have your discernment and also just understanding nuance because in my experience, in my opinion, and I just feel like today there's going to be just so much nuance that we explore. Um,
Mhm.
and also like on an unrelated side note, like I as a personal like a selfish thing, I want to know like a little bit about, and we'll circle back to this, like how your own dating, if you're comfortable obviously, but like
Yeah.
your own dating and relationship experiences go as a relationship teacher because as a relationship coach, like that's just a whole like thing in the mix that can just be interesting.
Yeah.
um and I always love like hearing about that from other like coaches and friends that teach around relationships, how it goes for them in dating and like in their long-term relationship, like how that factors in and like their personal boundaries, like in how their relationship interacts with their social media. It's so different. And it's just like such a modern,
Problem.
yeah, it's like a modern problem slash like thing to have to figure out.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
That I'm just truly fascinated by. So
Yeah.
we're gonna touch on that too. I think we should because it's just gonna be so interesting. But um, I really love what you said about how people can get a little lost in like certain rules. And I definitely agree with that a lot because I think that there can be a time and a place where it's like it can be a touchstone where it's like, am I, embodying what I like this new archetype that feels true to who I am and like let me continually connect to that thing. But to a certain point, like beyond a certain point, it starts to um, be counterproductive and counterintuitive. But at what point do you feel like that's true, and where have you noticed that specifically come up for people, would you say, that you've worked with, or just people in general?
That's the thing is there's not really a line. It's like, where's the
Yeah,
line? Where does it become too much? And it's different for every person. It's different for every
yeah,
couple. It's different for every situation. Um, I would say when it feels well, it's the difference between a medicine and a toxin is the dosage and the frequency.
true
So
that.
how frequent is it coming up? What is the intensity of it coming up? And then you have to have discernment of, is this the old dying or is this a warning sign? Which
Hmm.
is very hard to see on your own when you're in it.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. Because I mean, I feel like, and just speaking from my own personal perspective here,
Mhm.
I know learning feminine energy at one point, I was very resistant to it because I was like, I was at a place where I was like, no, I don't need to surrender and like learn surrender. I need to feel like I have control, you know? And that was true for me, especially like in young adult life, because in childhood I didn't feel that way. There was a lot of abuse, etc. And so it was like, no, like to practice feminine surrender would make me feel traumatized to be honest with you at that point in my life, unfortunately, right?
Sure.
um but then in time, like as I felt more, whole and capable and secure and trusting of myself, it became really valuable.
Mhm.
um and for me particularly, and this is like one of the main things I wanted to touch on with you today is um, something that I've seen a lot, and we've collaborated in the past. It's been a couple of years, but I
Yeah.
know we did a live stream and I believe a podcast.
Yeah.
And didn't you even just breaking the third wall here? You even had like my ex on your podcast at one point, right?
Oh yeah, I remember that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you guys can go
Crazy.
look that up. But yeah, I mean, I I feel as though like and back during those times, like the main part of my message that is still a huge part of my work was to was kind of like clear codependency, right? Like I even have a program like clearing codependency. Um, and it's really, really, really important foundational, fundamental stuff where, where you really do learn those pieces of like, you know, to take more responsibility for your happiness, to take more responsibility for your self-esteem, to take more responsibility for the way you feel and not like blame that on the people that you date, not blame that on your partner, right? Because it's a fine line of, you know, how I would say in dating, this can more commonly show up in my experience, but and then I want to give an example of long-term relationships. But in dating, for me, that work was very powerful because it's like, oh, like this man that I'm dating isn't being consistent with me. And so I feel anxious. So I feel insecure and like there must be something wrong with me, right? And so it's like, oh, like, no, when you take responsibility for those emotions, you can feel powerful even if and good, even if someone isn't showing up the way that you'd like them to, right? And usually that's how the cycle breaks, right? Because usually we're like drawing in those kind of people, choosing those kinds of people from those feelings, right? Um, but in like long-term partnership, right? And my last relationship was 8 years. And so I really, really got very practiced at this in that relationship. But, it can be like I'm bored, I'm lonely, I'm unfulfilled, I'm like unsatisfied in my life, or like whatever. Like let me put my relationship under a microscope and see like, is my partner still buying me flowers? Like, is my partner like, complimenting my appearance? Is my partner touching me? Like, our like is our sex still creative and spicy, or like where are those intentional lines, but also where are you kind of projecting shit like essentially onto your partner that you're not taking responsibility for? Like how do you feel? Have you been feeling like, frumpy in yourself and like you're feeling insecure? Have you been feeling unfulfilled in your life and you're trying to and you're like overly fixating on the relationship to fix that for you? But, right, and that's very, very valuable work, very, very valuable stuff that allows you to, in my experience, in my own just relationship experience and also with clients, that gives you so much power, like especially like when you are with someone, like for like 5+ years, or just like where you really get the time to settle in with someone and start to meet new versions of yourself with that person. You hold space for this evolution as that person grows and you see them in highs and lows, and and that being able to have that where you can hold yourself like that and not make them responsible for all your needs is really huge, right? But but there's a caveat to that where that I feel like I want to really get into with you today. Well, two kind of things, but that there is a line, right? Like there is a line where I feel like sometimes people like kind of are denying like their own needs in a relationship and in dating, like what you actually need, because you're like, but like my feelings are my job. My feelings are my responsibility. You know what I mean?
Mhm, mhm. Taking it to the other end of the spectrum.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
pendulum swinging all the way to the other side, to where it's
As
like,
we got to do in this human experience. I'm just kidding.
uh-huh, yeah, it's going to the other side of like full radical ownership where it's like, wait a second, I'm actually it's just me in the relationship at this point.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Hmm.
that's another thing to look at, which is again more of the work for yourself and how you play in the space of relationship.
Hmm.
Say,
Hmm.
um,
Yeah. Go ahead.
yeah, again, and it's so nuanced and so hard to figure out. And I think something that's coming up right now is like, again, with the confusion and all the stuff on social media, conflicting ideas. You learn attachment styles, for example, and then you filter everything through that, and then when we are uncertain or unsafe or dysregulated in our systems, we look for certainty, like you had shared, right? Like you were in this tumultuous space, so you needed a sense of control. And we look for certainty, assuredness, something that's true. And so, and we'll grasp at anything that feels a little true and then make it the thing that we place our security in. And then that becomes our lens we view the world through, even if it's not fully accurate all of the time. And that's the thing, is like the real truth is way more nuanced, but it's hard for the nervous system and the psyche of somebody who is extremely dysregulated and looking for answers to accept that, hey, this is true some of the time, because you're looking for like what's true right now. I need to know, and that I think is where it took me, and I'll speak from my own personal experience, trying on so many different truths as the truth before I realized, wait, they're all true. Sometimes. Oh,
Hmm.
and that was a mind fuck for my ego, because it's like, how the fuck can all of that be true and paradoxical things be true at the same time? And but when I really started to just like, let me see if I can hold that, is when I started to feel more peace, and I started to have more power, sense of empowerment through discernment, like a peaceful, yeah, I'm solid in myself, and I didn't have this rushed energy about me of, are they the right person or not, or is this toxic? Am I being toxic right now? Is this too much? Where's this thing? Or where's the shadow? It's just I was able to be in a relationship, right? And that took a lot of work, but that ultimately coming to at it from the place of like, well, all of this is true some of the time and in different situations and perspectives, and it's up to you to listen to the intelligence of your body and to find that discernment between fear and intuition and the voice of God. And um, that's a practice and a skill that you build. It's like tuning an instrument or playing an instrument, right? Your body is that instrument to the connection for the beyond. So the more time I spent with that, and the more that I made it about that, and the more that I gave grace, I gave myself if I fucked up, and recognizing that I never do actually, uh, the easier that whole game got to be. And now I just have a lot more patience with myself. I'm like, in relationship, like even in the relationship I'm in now, there's stuff coming up, and old me would have been like gripping, and oh my god, I might, this is this second guessing it all, and and I'm just like, wow, there's a lot here. Okay, let's be with it. Let's be present. Like what I'm just approaching it all different.
Yeah.
And the spaciousness and the patience allows this certainty that we're looking for when we're in this fried, overstimulated place to come through.
Hmm.
It comes through in the spaciousness and in the patience and in the not trying to feel like you didn't have all the answers.
Yeah.
And like, at least this is just where I'm at in my journey, and I want relationship to be a peaceful thing, and even the journey of evolution to be peaceful. I have done it very jarred and harsh and getting hit by semi trucks by God type of situations, and it's like, what if it could be a little bit more graceful and peaceful? And so that's where I'm at in my life, of like, let me just give it more space, and okay, wow, I was wrong on that. And okay, like, let me give it some time, and like, let me see that perspective. Oh wait, no, I know this is true for me now. And I feel like I'm dancing at a different tempo. There's a whole new song,
Hmm.
right? And that's what I really help my clients do, and what I want for people, because I feel like the
Yeah.
tempo that the collective is on when it comes to relationships is so walled up, jarred, rigid, right angled, you know what I mean? And
Hmm.
that's not love.
Yeah. Yeah, totally, totally, totally. I love what you said about having it be more peaceful, because like sometimes it's like we romanticize drama, and to a certain, like I love drama in the sense when it's intentional and playful, right? When it's
Yeah,
like, oh, like to me, like when I notice certain shadows in myself or whatever, like I like to be like playful with it and have fun, and I'm like, oh, my drama, and I like play with it, but it's like it's one thing when it's an intentional container of like, oh, my drama, right? Or like even in like this is one thing that I like really appreciate about like quick quick left turn here about like kink, right? Like
yeah,
where it's like you can create like this um the idea, right, when it's done like in a healthy way is that, or whatever, is that you're with someone that you trust, right? It's someone who makes you feel safe and respected, and like, you have that foundation with, right? And so you can step into this container that you both consciously choose to create together, and you play something else, right? But it's like and that can be really fun, like when you do that with yourself in a way, right? Where it's like you have this conscious awareness of your own like drama, your own or maybe like where we're like addicted to drama, or we just like normalize drama. But at the same time, like I agree with you, like so much is unnecessary and it's just a waste of energy. Because it's like it's not love, like it's the absence of love, right? um at least that's how it feels for me, but where it's like it's self-protection, it's games, right? It's
It's yeah, and you're not going to get the love you want from that energy either.
mm-hmm,
It really is, what version of myself am I bringing to relationship, and what is my subconscious, say it again for everybody listening,
mm-hmm,
subconscious association to relationships in general, like intimate relationship, right? What does my nervous system associate in that space subconsciously? What's that relationship to relationships? And then
mm-hmm,
who's the self that you're bringing? Are you bringing
mm-hmm,
some of yourself because you don't really fully trust and they might hurt you like the other person? Are you bringing what you think you need to be? Are you, like, are you bringing a guarded version of yourself? Or are you bringing all of yourself and it's like all out on the table and you're 2 feet in, right? Like all of that matters. And it's gonna, and I even saw it in my own relationship. Like when I wasn't 2 feet in, I was like, cool, we're boyfriend, girlfriend. But like, really, I was having eyes elsewhere, and I was all the like on my fuck shit, just not truly in it, and I was second guessing
mm-hmm.
in my head, looking at all her flaws. That's like on the fence energy.
Yep.
When
Mm-hmm.
I shifted that shit, all of my second guessing and all of my behavioral stuff, all of my anxieties and anxious attachment stuff and avoidant attachment stuff and the dysregulated shit that was showing up within me went away.
Yes, that's so true. Mm-hmm.
And it's because I chose to bring a different self to the relationship. Even
Mm-hmm.
if the ship sinks, I'm choosing to bring myself a different version of myself.
I I love that so much. And I'm gonna have to ask you like a really direct question that I feel like women are gonna want to hear. But
Yeah.
I love that you said the ship thing. That's something that like my boyfriend, my boyfriend has said to me from the very beginning. He's like, I'm chained to the ship, like meaning our and he's like, if it sinks, I'm drowning.
And that's the energy. Like that's the green flag,
Yeah,
for
exactly.
real.
So it's got to be a collective masculine thought. Like we're tying
Well,
ourselves to the ship.
I don't know about I mean, maybe a masculine thought, but just like I like to say, teamwork. Are
Yeah.
you committed to the team? If a different bid comes along, you're willing to bounce to go to a different team. Like, where's your loyalty at?
Right.
And so really, on my podcast now, I interview couples who've been together for like a decade and they're still like
Hmm.
passionately in love, and I ask them about their stories, and it's my own research, by the way. So I'm like, what's the commonality here? And the biggest commonality, other than both of them being growth oriented and actually willing to grow through their own shit, uh, is being a team player. They
Hmm.
have that posture towards relationship as a ship or a three-legged race and you're tied to the ankle or whatever the analogy they use. It's like we're collectively in this together.
Yeah.
There's not that's your work and this is my work. Well, that's some of the times true. It's like, and we're a team, so like how can I show up and support, or what can I do different, or anything. It's a different approach to all of it.
I swear this is very like intuitive of you. You brought up something that I really want to talk about with you, but before we do, I have to ask you. So you mentioned something about like being in a relationship at some point in time where you were technically official, right? But you didn't feel all in, right?
Yeah.
And I think for a lot of people, I think a lot of people have felt that more than they would like to admit. And I think also people can be very fearful of being on the other side of that, where it's like they're all in with someone who's maybe not all in. Um, and so, for me, I like I think that there's a lot to be said about letting someone's behavior like speak for like their truth and like who they actually are. Outside of, because there are some people who like and I've seen this with clients, but there are some men who like just want to like have sex with a woman, and she's like, no, like I don't have casual sex. And he's like, well, do you want to be my girlfriend then? And she's like, I'm not gonna date you just so you can have sex with me, like, kind of thing. So commitment can mean different things to different people, or they treat it like in different
Different.
ways. But I would love to know, how can it, like, in your opinion, and I know this goes out of like the emotional landscape that we've been exploring so far, but on a very practical level, like how do you feel like a man acts when he's not all in with someone that he might even be in a relationship with?
Good question. Because here's the thing, it's a little sneaky, you know. It's kind of like, I'm here, I'm committed. Like, what the fuck? But really, so that's the thing, is a lot of people, and I've even had a partner say to me, like, I'm here, like, and actually confess later, wait a second, I didn't realize I wasn't 2 feet in, you know. And so
Mhm.
it's hard to see, first off, but some of the behaviors and some of the practical ways you can see. Before I go into that, by the way, patience. Like, maybe somebody needs a little bit more time to make a decision fully. Like, so it doesn't mean it's the end of the world if they're not 2 feet in on the first date
Mhm.
or whatever. You're
Oh yeah.
or on your timeline. You
Yeah.
know, it give people a little bit of grace and a little bit of space and time, and also let presence what's alive for you. Right? It's a teamwork conversation, right? Versus, oh,
Mhm.
you're not out, you're not all the way in. Cool, I'm out. Like, that ain't
Sounding a
teamwork.
bit nuanced, if you ask me.
Say again.
It's sounding a bit nuanced, if
It
you
is a
ask
little
me.
bit, that part for sure. Yep. But some signs that a man isn't fully all in. I would say, I mean, definitely one of them is having eyes elsewhere, or looking around in that way still, whether you see it or not. It's kind of in his energy. Um, I would say you'll sense this. He's present or he's next to you, but it's not like a leaning in. You'll sense some guardedness, and a little bit of that is normal, but I'm talking like overall.
Mhm.
For me, it looked like back and forth. It was like, I'm all in, and then I'm, fuck, this isn't right, and then wait a second, shit, and then and I played that
Yeah.
game before, and that's what it looked like for me. It was very dysregulating for them and myself, but I was trying to be all in and couldn't, because I was coming at it from a not teamwork place, and uh, I hadn't gone all in on myself. So that's another one.
Mhm.
Like, and this is I did a master class on this, all about it's called Claimed, free plug. It's a free video on YouTube. two
Plug.
hours. It was sick, about how what a man needs in his life in order to show up and claim a woman. So it's not about
Mhm.
you at all. It's just the elements in this man's life that for him to be in leadership and claimership, to be able to even fucking bring that to you,
Mhm.
right? And so, some of those things, if I can remember off the top of my head, this was a few months ago. One of them being, I like to call it fuck off time, where he can let go of some responsibilities and play video games, or go to the gun range, or go to jujitsu, or go do something where he can play and be a little kid, because
Mhm.
men place a lot of responsibility, more so than you would probably think, on ourselves. And he needs a container, obviously, within boundaries, where he can fuck off a little bit and just let that go and let that down, so that he can, yeah, that rejuvenates the masculine spirit. And we're
Mhm.
missing that a lot in culture right now, which is why you see people, or men, chronically fuck off, or chronically lock in, or whatever the thing is, but there's not this middle ground balance. And that's that isn't the energy, right? Because even if he is fully locked in and he's claiming you, where's he claiming you from?
Mm-hmm.
Not his fullness, because he's not going to have access to his inner child, right? So there's that. There's also spaciousness, which is similar to fuck off time, but it's like time with no demands. I'm not going to play video games. I'm not going to say that I'm going to read. I'm not going to say that I'm going to meditate. This is usually comes later in life for guys where they find out that how necessary it is. This is like your grandpa in a rocking chair out in the front porch doing nothing, staring at the wind or staring at the trees. Like literally, that is rejuvenating for men.
Mm-hmm. I remember that one time in
Yeah.
1985.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And men don't do that as much and as we should. And
Yeah.
it's very important. Brotherhood, like his own connection to other men and holding him in integrity and calling him forth. And is he able to lead other men in any regard, right? Whether that's through
Mm-hmm.
business or sports or whatever. He needs to have that component in there as well. He also needs to
Mm-hmm.
have access to his aliveness, which for a man is his anger and not necessarily his aggression. That's not appropriate, but his anger. And I've had many conversations with women who don't feel like their man is leading in the relationship. He's there, he's present, but he doesn't feel all the way in. I don't feel ravished by this man. Like, and it's like at one point I was like, you want his killer to show up? And they're like, yes. You want this guy to be like, I'm gonna fucking slay the demon, or like, you know, whatever the thing is. You want that? I'm gonna kill something energy to show
Mm-hmm.
up in protection for you. But here's the thing: the judgment of women on the inner child or the spaciousness or his dangerous self. Any way that you judge that, you're emasculating it and cutting it off, and he's not going to be able to give it to you because you're getting in the way of that. So again,
Mm-hmm.
it's he's the most dangerous person in the household, should be, and you become the most dangerous if you're emasculating it because you don't recognize that's his protector and that's his life force. And when you're on a team, it's not there to hurt you anymore, as it might have from men in the past, or even with your lineage of men's aggression towards women and that whole thing. There's generational stuff there. But if you can create a sense of safety and recognize how hot that is and
Mm-hmm.
feed into that energy, watch out what he's going to do for you. You know,
Amen.
but he needs to act. He needs to emotionally have access to his anger, so he can't have that
Mm-hmm.
repressed anger, nice guy syndrome type of stuff. And then
Mm-hmm.
also, men have a proclivity to preserving energy evolutionarily. So if you think hunter gatherers, men were hunters, and if we're going to chase a rabbit that's 500 calories and we spend 1,000 calories chasing it, that doesn't make sense for survival. So we built bow and arrows or we built traps. And so what appears as lazy is maybe a man being primal in how he's preserving his energy, and he's only going to play a game he knows he can win.
Mm-hmm.
A man's going to
Yeah.
give up on the relationship when he realizes, I can't win this game. I can't win her over. So I'm not going to, the math doesn't, the boy math doesn't add up. And my effort to like what I get is not, you know, he's
Mm-hmm.
either going to emotionally leave the relationship, shut down, or actually leave the relationship. And then you're going to get frustrated, and it's this whole other thing. So if you can just recognize, can you, as a woman, be winnable? Or because if you're leading from insecurity, nothing's ever going to be enough. You're always going to find
Mm-hmm.
something in a thing because humans are always going to have things to work on.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah.
so I hope that painted the picture of some stuff of where a man wouldn't lead and wouldn't be all in. That
Mm-hmm.
those are some of the things that he just needs in his life. And so if you recognize like he's not, oh, the last one is purpose. He's pursuing something greater than himself. If he's not doing that, he's serving himself. And so to the feminine energy, he's going to be a taker instead of a gardener. He's going to
Mm-hmm.
take instead of tend to, because it's of self-service. So it's up to you to discern which energy that is and which energy he's coming from and in the elements of his life, and you loving him more won't change that.
Mm-hmm.
I need every woman
Yeah.
to hear that. Like, there's nothing for you to do that can change any of those things other than trust that that's what he needs and give him space to do it. Don't judge it. Like that, like
Hmm.
get out of the way, let those things happen. And if he's really committed to you, it will pour into the relationship and pour into you.
Hmm.
But most of the time, if you're mothering, you think you know better or whatever it is. There's so many ways that you can get in the way, which is what self are you bringing? So
Yeah.
yeah, eyes elsewhere. It looks like eyes elsewhere, addictions. And this could be his own stuff though, getting in the way too. Not fully trusting you, not fully or overly controlling you. One of the extremes. Um, Not feeling like a team. You don't feel like you have a teammate.
Hmm. Yeah. I got some goosebumps on that one.
Yeah, it's like and again, for the single ladies out there, it's like, are they growth oriented and are they a team player? That's
Yeah.
all you really need to look for if you're looking for something
Hmm.
to last. That and then all the other stuff that everybody else talks about online, you already know all the shit. I don't have to say it, but like growth oriented team player, that's it. That's the lottery because like you can grow through anything at that point and you get to it together. But then also,
Yeah.
can I be that myself and choose to show up as that. And then this is the last thing I'll say, and then I've been rambling for a while. But
I think it's great.
the trusting yourself in relationship and trusting another in relationship is really saying, I trust myself to get back up, even if this doesn't work out.
Hmm.
But here I am with all of myself because I know if it doesn't work out, I know that I've done everything that I could.
Yeah.
And I'm willing to
Yes.
do that for you and for us and for myself. And I'm the type of man that gives all of myself to something and I choose fully into everything in my life.
Hmm.
So another way, ladies, for you to have discernment of is this man capable of going all in? Is he all in his life? Does he go all in with relationships and connections and friendships? Does he when he devotes himself to a hobby, is he just trying things? Is he bouncing around from thing to thing? And that's a season that men go through. But is he devoted to service? Is he devoted to higher power? Is he devoted to, you know what I mean? Does he have
Hmm.
devotions? Is that muscle built in him?
Right. Yeah, 100%. I mean, you said so many things that I would want to I would want to spend like a whole day like for going into each one. But there were so many nuggets in that, and I know that people listening to this probably got a lot out of that. A lot of different nuggets, to at least, if not beyond that. But I think there's so much that you said. And there's like a few little things that I want to just like extra acknowledge, but I just because I mean I love what you said about like his killer, and I agree with that.
Yeah,
And that used to be like because one of the reasons why I got into the work that I do is like just Cliff Notes version, like in my childhood my mom was married to this man who was incredibly like physically abusive, right? And so that was really like negatively impactful for me. And I was starting young adult life like with PTSD, you know what I mean? And like and no support, right? And so to me, like I was actually afraid of that. Like I was actually afraid of that. And so
yeah,
feeling any kind of anger, like my body would have a like a trauma like an actual trauma response. I know that that word gets thrown around like so lightly, but like literally like trigger PTSD, right? Like kind of response, right? And so it's like I had to actually like work through that within myself to be able to learn to recondition myself to actually like truly love and appreciate a healthy level of killer instinct like when a man is responsible with it, because at one point like I used to be so like repelled by it because it scared me, but now it's like that's like one like in my relationship with my partner, like one of the things, and to me, he's such an embodiment of like great masculine energy, and I'm just so grateful. And so I will always reference him. But one of the things that he shared with me, and take it how you will, but it really reminds me of something he said to me. He's like, a gentleman is nothing more than a patient wolf. And it's like an old quote.
Mm.
And some people will be like, whoa, whatever. Like you can take it to mean many different things. But to me, like how I see it is that like I'm capable of ripping someone's head off, right? But I'm a gentleman. I wouldn't do that, right? And so, yeah, and I'm like, hot. You know what I mean? Like now I'm like, oh, that's hot. But it's like, but it's only as hot as how much like self-control a man has. And for
Yeah.
men, yeah. And so for men, it's like, and I know that there's so much like collective things, right? Where like, men are emasculated even in like their childhood with their relationship with their mothers at times or whatever, or like society, like, no, like don't be toxic or whatever, right? And so men can a lot of the times like when their anger should arise, they can collapse into like their inner little boy, right? Like I think that was something that you touched on that I really resonate with, and there were so many things that you said where I feel like I don't want to call them like red flags because I don't think a lot of them are like consciously negative things, and usually red flags aren't, but they are. But I think that you named some specific things that are just so on point when a man like isn't in touch with that in a healthy way, right? So whether it's he's more like in the emasculated like role, and I'm overgeneralizing here, but um and he has a hard time like stepping into that killer instinct, right? Like in my experience, like that man is scattered in his purpose. Like he's typically not all in. Like he might have like some difficulty like being consistent, like going to the gym, right? Like I feel like those kinds of things are like very connected, which I know that there can be like some health things and like testosterone stuff that can play a role that might be
Yep.
out of whack as well. But like what came first, the chicken or the egg? I don't know. But um, and so yeah, like I just think that you nailed so much. But there's two things that in particular I really, really want to touch on with you, um, in our with our time together today, which is, you know, I want to talk about like a little bit about relationship compromise, right? And I think that you touched on it. And this is where I said you're like being psychic right now because this is one of the main things I wanted to touch on, which is, I think sometimes it's like we can get a little confused where it's like in a long-term relationship, like I need to hold space for my partner. I need to be like a team player. I need to take more responsibility for my feelings. I need to take more responsibility for my needs. And also, like, I need to, when we're hearing messages like that, and we're also hearing messages like, hey, like, am I respecting myself? I'm an independent woman. Like, don't depend on a man. I think sometimes we lose like what compromise is in a relationship. And I want to I want to preface talking about compromise with I truly believe overall, like when you're in a really good relationship that is good for you, like any compromise is ultimately going to more greatly serve the relationship, which
And you.
ultimately,
Yep.
yeah, exactly, which ultimately more greatly serves you,
Yep.
right? And so and like to just be really honest, like in my last relationship, there was so much individuation
Mm.
that I didn't like that felt I didn't really like it wasn't like after my last relationship ended that I felt like I needed all this time to come home to my individual self outside of like an interconnected experience because I felt so in that already in that
Yeah.
relationship container. And, you know, whereas in the relationship I'm in now, I'm like, oh, like I get that body experience where it's like, I don't lose my sense of self, but my sense of self feeds the relationship because I think when people have more anxious tendencies, and I'm going to say in particular, in particular women here because I work with more women, but um, it's like we can think compromise means self-abandonment, right?
Right.
And and there's something, and I've been continued to be like beautifully humbled by like in experiencing this in my relationship personally, where it's like my partner can like want to do something and it can just be like the way we spend our day or something. Um and it can go against like what I thought I wanted and my willingness to not just like abandon that without like addressing like what do I feel, what do I need? Let me express anything that I feel or need here. But like my willingness to just like surrender in that way or like compromise like what I thought like I wanted or needed. And it ends up being this overall like the thing that we end up doing ends up being overall nourishing to the relationship, and which allows him to kind of be like to show up for me more, and then which allows because I found okay, and let me know if this makes sense because I feel like it's a little tricky here, but um I found at times, like for me personally, a pattern of mine is that I in the past like I wouldn't necessarily compromise because like I just wouldn't for whatever reason, whether it was the relationship or whatever. But like I was so used to just like meeting all of my own needs that and putting that responsibility on myself a lot. And I want to share this because I think a lot of women who are so like, good at like not being codependent and like lean into like in being the independent woman, hyper independency, right? Source your own feelings, meet your own needs, right? Love yourself first. And when you get so good at that, that it's like you almost start becoming an island in a relationship, right? Like your two separate islands, versus like this one like cohesive unit that
Yeah.
serves both of you, right? And so I would find that like for me personally, like in the past, where I would have certain needs or feelings like, oh, like I need to maybe decompress more, or like I need to have some alone time to um figure out like this next creative thing for my work that I'm going to be doing that's kind of bouncing around in my head a little bit. And I would think that I needed all of that time like alone or to do this thing myself. And in reality, like in my current relationship, it's like, oh, actually, like I don't have to do this now in this way. And I'm also not abandoning it, but I'm finding how like the relationship is overall nourishing me in a way that feeds like what I actually need. But I have also found that when you are in this like interdependent relationship and the masculine partner, the more so masculine partner or whatever, um is attuned to the woman, to the feminine or whatever, right? Um, there will be just like this such a cohesive flow where it's like sometimes I have found that like my partner almost he doesn't know what I need better than I do, but like he knows me so well and he's so good at being like taking charge that it's like something that he suggests will almost it won't be my necessarily initial thought, but it's almost like in a way like he knows better than I do to an extent because he knows me so well. Because my initial instinct is just to like do it within myself, like individually, if that makes sense. Does that make sense? I know that was like a
Totally.
long, yeah,
Yeah,
but it's,
yeah, yeah. It's the
yeah.
individual, it being a full individualized. It brings up, puts up walls. That's like you're so self-loving that you don't need love, and it's the type of dynamic, but you do.
Yeah,
So good luck.
yeah,
It's
exactly.
it's a funny dance. I even talked to a client this morning, and she was like, sorry, I'm having like needing so much validation. I'm like, that's normal. Don't
Hmm.
villainize validation, external validation. Like if you live in it, yeah, something to look at. But every once in a while, I call my friends for support and like, hey, is this am I delusional right now? Like, I need some support. Like, can you clearly reflect what's here for me? And sometimes that's validation,
Hmm.
And so things like that where we're not on an island and so just self-sufficient all the time. It
Hmm.
ignores our wholeness. And part of being human is that we do need each other,
Hmm.
and spiritually we can't get to the places that we are trying to get to on our own. You
Hmm.
don't do relationship work in your room with the door closed just by yourself and your journal and your mirror, like,
Exactly.
or in plant medicine, or in breath work. Like those are great experiences, and we can't do relationship work where it requires two people without another person. You can do self work,
Hmm.
but ultimately relationship work is self work, and self work is relationship work. They interplay, and they're very distinct at the same time. So I think that's just something to note. Like,
Hmm.
It's important. And again, that's the what's your association to relationships? Is it I'm just myself and you're yourself and we're just together having fun? Or are you approaching it from like a, oh, we're in this to grow, so let's actually 2 feet in, and you're my greatest teacher
Hmm.
because you're going to bring up
Yeah.
all the stuff subconscious. And
Hmm.
here's the thing too, and I just want to preface this a little bit, like, there's a lot of narratives and people can become aware of it, of like, well, I don't want to change them, or I don't want to heal, like, or oh, I have a pattern of like trying to heal them and change them, or whatever the thing is. It's like love does the healing. You don't need to be that. You just get to be like love them and let it happen naturally.
Yeah, and they should be receptive, like
Totally.
I think when people are like both do want to grow, it's like when you're not trying to change someone, but you're like expressing what you feel or like, or what you observe or whatever it may be. Um, and something that I feel like is really important for women that like that don't want to like step into that like mother role, right? Like I think it's more about like expressing like what you feel versus like kind of telling someone who they are, like what to do or whatever. I think a man that like gives a shit, right? And like about himself and you, like is going to receive and maybe change, right?
Yeah,
And you didn't change him, but you inspired something that
totally.
activated his own desire to change, you
That,
know? Yeah. And so I love that you brought that up and that is so true. Um, and I think it just all goes back to like what you said before, where it's like being a team, right? Because I think that it's like if you think of like a school project where it's like you're doing a group assignment, and if one person does all the work and shuts everyone else out, versus like if it's actually a well-constructed team, right? And so like you might not it might be might have told yourself, oh, it's faster and more efficient if I do this, this, and that. But then you rob yourself of the experience because it's like, in my experience of like the co-creative, like collaborative element of a relationship, it's like, you miss out on like it's almost like you table the independence and you open yourself up to receive so much more than like you would have just had if you were just independent and did it all yourself, right? Because it's like your partner has their own perspective. And if you're with someone that you value, right? Like they have their and respect, it's like they have their own like perspectives and they have their own ways of being that, like collapse time around your needs or like the things that you want to do in this life and vice versa. It becomes this really cool thing if you're able to just like open up and like surrender a bit and like, not be so like rigid of like, having to taking so much responsibility for just like making because to me like how it feels in my relationship and this just and I'm using this as an example because it feels like a really good example, which is like my dreams and his dreams are like both of our dreams. You know what I mean? Like
yeah.
it's not like this my dream alongside of your dream, although we have our own individual things that we do, but it's like I have like, and it's not like I'm gonna go do what I need to do for my thing and then we can connect, right? More like island vibes. It's like I have what I need and I'm bringing that forward to us,
Mhm.
right? And like, and vice versa. And it just becomes this really valuable thing where, again, like I really, really believe in a good relationship like that. It's like you go further together faster than you do alone. And that's not just romantic relationships though either. It's platonic as well. Um, but yeah, if there's anything that you want to add to that, I want to give you room to do that. And then I want to touch on like the personal relationship coach vibe of dating and
Yeah.
stuff.
I'll say this on compromise. I think you hit the nail on the head. You compromise, but ultimately you don't. Like
Yeah.
that's true compromise. If it's coming from like, well, I need to shut down this part of myself, which is what a lot of people fear is happening, um, and it doesn't come back, then yeah, you might not. That might not be compromise. At self abandonment, which is very different. And so I just think that we talk about self abandonment so much as a culture and on Instagram and all things that there's not a lot of talk about compromise. So the distinction goes missed. Um,
Hmm.
in my opinion and from my perspective in my algorithm, you know what I mean? So
Agreed.
yeah, like compromise is essentially saying I want what's best for us more than what I want best for me. and not to a self-abandonment level. Again, like I'm still able to be here and in my truth, and it all compromise can also look like, where do you want to eat tonight? I want pizza. I want sushi. Well, on a scale of 1 to 10, how bad do you want pizza? And on a scale of 1 to 10, how bad do you want sushi? You want sushi more than I want pizza, so let's get sushi. Like that's
Hmm.
compromise too. On it, we can see
Yeah.
it with stuff like that.
Hmm.
But when it's bigger stuff, we over it's over sensitive because it's over personalized. We make it about
Yeah.
us instead of sushi or pizza, right? And so
Right.
maybe if we can zoom out and just see it as that, a little bit more subjective and objective, I'm sorry, instead of just like it's about me and my feelings and all the inner stuff. um, Try it and see how it goes.
Yeah.
Like what
Totally.
if you could just try it for a little bit and see how it
Hmm.
feels and see what comes up for you and see what you learn. And you don't have to devote your life to forever shutting that part of you down or whatever extreme thing you put in your brain about it all. So try it.
Yeah.
That's all I got to say. And with compromise, it's like, yeah, both people get to compromise sometimes. So notice if it's all one sided. That's just also something to
Hmm.
note. And it might feel one sided if you have more stuff, more if you're more rigid and you're loosening up. It might feel
Hmm.
one sided. So again, like an eye for, oh, this is my medicine right now. Got it. Instead of being
Yeah.
holding on to self righteousness. But all right, you wanted to talk dating.
Yeah. Totally, totally, totally. I agree. Like there. See, again, like I feel like this could just be a whole like a day podcast. So let me just throw in because your like what you brought forward like clarified like just a little piece of like to me compromise and there's so much that you said where it's like be mindful of where it's like one sided, right? Because that could be like being taken advantage of or whatever. But it's like to like compromise where it's like you're considering yourself because like I think when we're so afraid of self-abandonment, it's like we're like, what do I need? What do I need? What do I need? That we're willing to just like cast the other person's needs aside. And I will admit, like I swung to that extreme at times, because I was so afraid of abandoning myself because I used to do that so bad, right? And so where it's like, no, like consider their needs. Like their needs should matter too. And when it's the right relationship and you're overall like going into like the same path, right? Like when you consider their needs alongside of your own, it doesn't cost you your needs, right? But overall it feeds it. Just it might not be a direct route, but overall you get more and you do progress forward faster. At least that's just been my experience. So I want to like personally, I thank you for like what you brought forward around that because it just, I think, like the co-creative energy that we've brought on this episode has just been like really chef's kiss for the people
Yes.
listening.
Yes.
Oh gosh, just knocked into my computer here. But so yeah, as far as the dating piece goes, how how has it been for you? Because I know like you've been coaching around relationships for years, as have I. And I'm just so curious like how this has like positively and negatively like impacted your personal life. Has there anybody been like, "Oh, like I don't want to date you because that feels intimidating," or like that feels or like have you
Not
just
to
like
my
noticed anything? Awareness?
yeah,
Okay, okay.
not to
I've heard
my
that
awareness.
before.
Maybe they never said it, but
Yeah.
I'm sure from observation there is a little bit of pedestalization that happens, and or seeing me as more advanced than I am. It's like, oh, he has shadows. And it's like, yeah, I'm a fucking human. You didn't like. So
Boom,
there's a
off the
little,
pedestal. Just
yeah.
kidding.
There's
Yeah, no,
there's
I
a
get it.
little bit of that, I'll say, across the board. Yeah, I've been doing this work for almost 10 years now, so it's
Hmm.
um, yeah, pedestalization, seeing me as the some persona instead of just seeing me as me and flawed and all the things. Even though and my brand is all about vulnerability and I share all the shit that I'm working through.
Hmm.
Sometimes it can still come up. So there's that. In breakups, certain breakups, not as much in recent ones, but where it really rocked me. Like I'm a fucking relationship coach and this failed. Like what the
Mm,
going through that
yeah.
in my inner and assuming that people would judge me when really I was just judging myself, and it was actually my like fear of my dad's judgment, which he passed away, so it was just an illusion. But anyway, like there's a bunch with that of judgments towards others and like having to uphold a persona. Um, and I'd say also just because of I think being a man and the culture that with cancel culture that we live in and the extremism that the stuff that can happen, there's definitely like and I can speak to a lot of men on this of well, like I work with women, okay, like
Mm.
95% women.
Mhm.
And in order to do what I do, like I have to be a safe space.
Mhm.
And so I really hold that to a high regard. And I know that there are people that just love enjoying tearing other people down. And so it's nothing that I ever worry about, but it's something that I keep an eye on of like kind of the you could twist this all around in a relationship or a dating scenario. You could twist this all around and like just try to destroy my reputation. And so there's a
Yeah.
little bit of that where it's like this is extra vulnerable to open up in relationship with you because of what I do. And yeah, I've got shadows and all this stuff, and I trust that that won't happen. I trust that you're not that type of a person. Uh,
Mhm.
and so there's that because that's it's a real thing, and unfortunately, I know people who are safe spaces who have been just targeted as not because a lot of men aren't, and that just
Mhm.
blanket goes over it. And I get a lot of that too on Instagram. Like this isn't besides dating and relationships. I just get a lot of projections because I'm a man. What the fuck do you have to say about how can you heal a woman and all the things? And
Yeah.
it shouldn't be doing that. And I'm like, well, a wound from a man can only really be healed by a man. So there's a bunch of stuff that I can dive into with that. But um relationally, yeah, I would say the pedestalization is probably the biggest piece. It's like, dude, I'm human too. I got
Yeah.
I got shit. I ain't trying to be perfect out here online, but apparently that's what I put out. I don't know. Or
Yeah.
what's so that and then the wow, I'm a relationship coach and this didn't work out. Like who the fuck am I type of a thing. But that's I think partially really real and also the more that I am in this industry, the more I recognize that I enjoy the spiritual component and the evolution and helping people really liberate themselves from patterns
Mhm.
that show up in relationship more so than calling myself a relationship coach and doing a relationship coach thing. The,
Right.
I'm more of the spiritual. Let's work on yourself. This is the pattern. Let's actually shift it.
Mhm.
Than a couples therapist. Although I do that work as well with couples in some fashion, and it's really fun. Um,
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean that's what I'd say. The pedestalization thing is fucking real.
Yeah. I mean, that makes sense, but it's so interesting. And I will say, like, I agree with you. Like, I love relationships and relationship work for because to me it feels like the most fundamental foundational part of life that is just so humbling and powerful at the same time. And it's an evolution, it's a growth thing, and like it's a spiritual practice to be in a relationship. But the thing that, I think is so interesting because I love that like nobody gave you shit for any of your breakups, but I got shit for my last breakup. I literally
Oh, I'm sure I got shit, just not to my face.
no, but it was so bad. And like, I during that time I will admit I did lean into it because I was kind of taken aback by it at first. And so I just kind of got like more like villain era-y about it, where I just like acknowledged it and played around with it. And I was like,
Yeah,
ha ha ha, like whatever. But I was like stumbling on full on hate threads and like all this stuff. And I was like, that like you guys care that much? Like I'm kind of flattered and also like you good?
yeah, yeah.
But but also too like at the end of the day it's like because I think as a teacher of anything it's like your work is it's like a process and it's a practice that you utilize yourself, and it doesn't
Mm,
necessarily mean that you don't lean on it at times, right? Or that you're not in process at times as well. And, I will also say that it's like it's so fascinating to consider where it's like, because to me, like I just whenever I hear somebody say like, oh, a successful relationship is about the longevity of it, like I to me that is such a like a black and white way of thinking. That like from my last relationship, like I just felt so clear on that where it's like after that like I just after that relationship ended because it was so long like it 8 years like I don't know that's a long time for a girl in her 20s, you know what I mean? And like um and I just felt and it just became very clear to me that there's so many people and again like there's nuance and that's the theme of this, right? Relationship nuance today. But it's like there's so many people who like might have gotten they might be in a very long-term relationship, but it's like there can be a lot of things that are missing and like a lot of needs not being met and a lot of things that they're ignoring. And that to me doesn't inspire me, the most, right? Like it's about like the quality of the relationship and longevity is a bonus, right? Because obviously and that's great because you want to build with somebody and whatever, but something that I've personally come to accept about myself is that like even as a relationship like and I talk about like all kinds of relationship and I'm teetering into like kind of like business stuff a little bit here or there as well, but like I for me personally like a lot of my clients and not all of them but a lot of my clients like they want to get into this like long-term like partnership like husband wife like whatever and for me, like that is not something that feels like personally attractive right now, like in life. Like that's not like a goal of mine. To me, like like that's just and I think that people can just like want different things and like need different things at different times. And it's it's just so interesting and fascinating how we can pedestal like whether or not like just someone being in a long-term relationship and whether or not it's lasted and like how right that and qualified and capable that makes them of something. And when in reality, in actuality, life is so much more nuanced than that because sometimes it's like you were in a long-term relationship and it showed you to yourself and like what you would really need long term. And then you go through that breakup and then you have a few more experiences as you like start to unpack that for yourself or whatever and then you land into a relationship that lasts for like 30 years or for the rest of your life or whatever, but it's like at the end of the day like your journey is yours. And like when we compare it to this like linear idea of like that like it goes back to conditioning, can be like religion, it can be what our parents taught us or whatever, but it's like you find one person and they give you everything that you need and you automatically know yourself going into your first ever relationship with the right person and the end and you live happily ever after. And if it doesn't last, if it ends for whatever reason because it was never the right relationship in the first place or you grew and they didn't or whatever it was, you fail, you're not qualified. Like, it's just like silly to me at this
Yeah,
point.
it is silly. Well, it's either that narrative or you point the finger and blame it all on them.
Hmm.
And it's kind of like, well, what if there's something bigger at play here and I can't see it? And we just didn't work.
Yeah.
And I think like that's the more healthy route that I've ever taken instead of
Yeah.
they didn't do this or I did this or I'm not enough and they're not this. And it's like, wait a second, we just didn't work.
Yeah, it just wasn't the right fit for sure.
Yeah.
Exactly. I agree. Okay. Well, let's leave it at that. Because this has been so juicy.
Mhm.
And definitely gonna want to have you back at some point. Because again, like I just feel like we cracked into so many things that we could just endlessly go into, to be honest. And I would
Definitely.
like to explore some more of those things at some point. But
Yeah.
before we wrap up, tell the people where they can find you, where they can follow you, where they can check out working with you and all the things.
Yeah, everything is the Heart Guy on Instagram. Also, Kevin Crenshaw on YouTube. It's where I post a lot of my podcast clips and longer form there. But yeah, I'd say follow me there. I've got lots that's coming out this year. I've got lots of like I said, the free master class that I shared a little bit about. link in bio, all things. Just go on Instagram, the heart guy.
Yeah, love it. I love your stuff on Instagram. So thanks for being here with me today.
You're
And
welcome.
yeah, go follow him and find all the stuff, you guys.
Later. Thank you.